We're always trying to build the case that we're enough. So we go through life acting as if we're enough or not, pretending or trying or thinking we need to be something else to be enough. And that's not how it works.
Welcome back to the podcast. Today I have Michael Kline. Michael Kline is the senior trainer at the RIM Institute. RIM stands for Regenerating Images and Memory. And why am I having Michael on the podcast? Because honestly, Michael helps people get to the root of their feelings of not being enough. And that generally has a lot to do with those memories
Mhm.
and images that are formed in our formative years. So I did a session with Michael about a week ago. We got deep. It was fun. And we're going to be talking a lot about that. But I don't want to bore you with all that stuff. Let's just get to Michael. Michael, hello and welcome to Act Bold.
Diane, I'm so happy to be here. It's
Thank
very
you.
cool. You're doing great work with, it's really important that so that people can, so that um, if people don't get to express themselves, however they do, the world is left short of something, right? And we're left short of something. So whether it's through acting or arts or just having a voice in our own personal relationships, this is really critical work. So I'm happy to do that.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
you know what? I mean, this gets to the crux of it because I have so many people who will reach out to me and say, I'm not an actor, but the advice you give, the themes that you talk about really touch me as a human being.
Mhm.
And this is another one of those things.
Right.
It's a problem that actors deal with, but why? Because it's a problem that human beings deal with.
That's right.
And actors are always trying to portray human beings. So the
Yeah.
two get very wound up together.
And most people are just wandering through life acting happy, acting that they're,
Yeah.
well, as the enoughness guy, that's what enoughness is all about. We're always trying to build the case that we're enough. So we go through life acting as if we're enough or not, pretending or trying or thinking we need to be something else to be enough. And that's just not how it works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, maybe let's talk a little bit about this session because we did
Okay.
you led me through a RIM session last week, and it was deep. It was meaningful. It really shifted a few things around in me, which was great, as all those good subconscious
Yeah.
works do. So yeah, let's talk about it. I'm not sure honestly how I should lead this because you're the expert, right? So I'm not
Well,
really sure what
kind of.
to say. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
because you just start with that, with the language around that, because language can be very important. That I actually didn't lead you.
Mm.
And it's an important use of the word facilitate, because I facilitated you. So I made it easier for you to go on this journey, but you did all the leading. And no point, we are not in the business of diagnosing or prescribing. I don't know. First of all, I don't think there's anything wrong. So there's nothing to diagnose. And who am I to think that I should know what you need? I'm not the expert on you. No one else is. And so I think that's the broken model that generally doesn't work.
Mm.
It helps. There are a lot, we can get a lot. I want to go to a consultant when they have the answer to my problem. Answers to your problems that help us manage our problems better. It doesn't, the root cause doesn't get changed or healed by talking about it or by figuring out coping skills to manage our emotions. Emotions are not here to be managed. So it's really important that I come with a lot of humility. I have a lot of expertise on the RIM process. I have no expertise on you.
Mm.
I know that
Yeah.
you need to be in charge. You created all of your content, and you didn't even work at it. You thought it's like you felt led, I think, or not felt led
No,
in a
no,
bad
no.
way.
I
But
think I
no,
just and I can understand why that word's is sort of triggering for you, actually, as I look over it, because you were just giving me
yeah,
questions that I was answering.
that's right.
So, yeah. And
Not even
so,
questions. That's why I know that, because this is really an important difference. So if I ask you a
okay.
question, I could pull on my chin a little bit and sound like a therapist, which I'm not. So if I asked you questions, those questions would be going to the thinking part of your brain, which has no access to the emotional part of your brain. And
Mhm.
so what felt like questions was actually helping you bring up whatever was coming up next that was not coming from the thinking part of your brain. I gave
Mhm.
you, see, I'm really splitting hairs on
Yeah.
purpose.
You
So,
definitely are.
right? And so if I
It
give you
sounds
a
like
sentence,
semantics to me,
yeah, it sounds
because
like
you were
semantics.
asking questions. You
Mhm.
were saying, "What does it look like? What
Oh,
does the
yeah, yeah, yeah,
shape of
that's
it,"
fine to
right?
ask what it
Those
because
were
we wanna
questions. Yeah.
yeah, so we ask some questions about that. Look, if I ask what does it look like or what color it is, all of that, that's wanting to engage the thinking part of your brain to come along as a partner, but she doesn't get to be in charge because thoughts
Mhm.
don't heal emotions, stuck emotions. So when we go into the emotional work, it was all sentence leads. So if you have a dialogue with someone, I would give you a sentence lead. I would say, and dad, what I want to say to you is, and dad, how it
Mm.
feels when you
Mhm.
do that. Those are sentence leads. Those prompts get a different response than if I ask a question. I've tested this, proven it over and over again for
Yes.
myself.
Yeah,
If I,
yeah.
when we give the sentence leads, it allows you to stay beneath the logical thinking mind that is still talking about the emotional experience rather than being in it. So it's important. It's a really subtle but important shift that takes a lot when we teach this to trauma therapists or to coaches who use it in their work that this is the hard part to get because it seems like it's not important, and yet as the client for your experience it's actually critical, and it's
Mm.
invisible to the client. You don't even notice, but it's really powerful. That's what allowed you to create all the content without having to sit here and think up stuff.
Right.
Yeah, and you
Yeah.
did really good at that because you didn't. Yeah, you just went where it went. It was, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it was yeah, I mean, actors love that kind of stuff,
Uh-huh,
right? We love exploring these feelings and all of that. And, as I told you, it reminded me a lot of some of the better acting sessions I've had, acting
uh-huh.
coached acting sessions,
Mhm,
like to get to those feelings and all of that. But, different objective, but sort of
yeah,
in some ways, some of the same methods, which is super, super interesting. But I really want to get to talking about this whole thing of feeling not enough because I heard an interesting podcast yesterday with Mel Robbins and Stephen, oh, I can't think of his name, but from Diary of a CEO, where Mel was saying that as little kids, we kind of like are born into loving ourselves. We're born into being happy and open. And it's only through experiences that we have that we begin to change around that. And the way the Mel said it was, that you're flirting with yourself in the mirror, you're smiling at everyone, and then one day you go to school and all of a sudden you start to categorize people.
mhm,
Oh, those are the cool kids. Oh, those are the jocks. Oh, those are, where do I belong? Who do
mhm.
I belong? Those are the nerds, whatever it is. Who do I belong to? And that's when maybe the first, if you've had perfect parents, which who does, but, that's when maybe some of the really like reinforcing feelings of not being enough in
Mhm.
society at large start to come from. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree completely. Sometimes we use the analogy of it's just dust on the furniture. Life's events are just dust falling on the furniture. It's like we're the furniture in this story, and
Mm, okay.
but it is not us. The dust on your coffee table is not the coffee table.
Right.
So life events happen, and we mistake them for ourselves. That we become our events, or we become the stuck emotions from those events. And I think a lot of times, because I've taken so many people going back into childhood memories, and when they're 3 or 4, life is pretty good for most kids. Most of the kids that are lucky enough to have a good life at three or
Right.
four,
Yeah.
and you get to kindergarten or you get to daycare, and that's where you start getting compared. Like you just said, it's like long before the jocks table and all of that. That's kind of more traumatizing. But what really starts getting stuck is by the time we're 4-ish or 5 years old and comparing to other kids. And we're, in fact, for men, most men are told as boys by the time they're 4 or 5 years old is the first time we were told to man up. And
Yes.
most men go to their grave still trying to figure out exactly what that really means, or they do it
Yes.
really poorly and still wondering what does that mean.
I mean, how are you supposed to
You
do it when you're 5 years
right?
old?
You
And
can't.
what the heck is that supposed to
No.
mean anyway, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what
And
does
of
that
course,
say to a girl,
yeah,
right?
at the same time, yeah, what's that
Yeah,
indicate to the girl? And if you're not, then you're told you're anything feminine. So you're a sissy, you throw like a girl, something like that. It's insulting to girls. And lots of mothers contribute to this in the way they raise their boys and wonder why boys grow up to be men who don't respect or appreciate women.
Mm.
And it's just there from the very beginning. And I think even from the day you're born, we're hearing constantly. I hear mothers bragging about their kid. They're in the doctor says they're in the 99th percentile
They're
of
all in the 99th
everything.
percentile,
Yeah,
right?
or
Yeah,
in your size, your weight gain as you're
yes,
6 months old, you go in for the checkup and they're talking about the percentile. You're always compared to what is normal
yeah.
and what is expected, and everybody's shooting for this perfect score for their kid. And so the children growing up, we learn that as part of our language before we can speak. We're
Mm,
constantly being talked about and compared to these standards. And it doesn't
yes,
nobody's evil thinking, "Oh my god, my child's, I'm hurting my child by saying they're right where they're supposed to be, or they're in the 90th percentile, and the doctor says,
right.
"Don't worry about it, though. They sometimes grow a little faster in the next coming months." It's like all of that feels like a lot of hyped up anxiety over something
Mm,
called life.
yeah. So, gosh, I mean, it just seems like this huge cycle, first of all,
Mhm.
because I have a sister who has a little baby. Well, he's about 2 years old now, but yes, she was always saying exactly,
Yeah,
he's in the 97th percentile of height. He's in the 97th
yeah,
percentile
of
of this.
course.
He's already doing this. He's already doing that. He's much
Yeah,
further along than other kids his
yeah.
age.
This is not abuse, right? This is love.
No, she
It's just how it shows
loves
up.
that baby, yes. I
Yeah,
mean, she sent me a video of him bouncing in his bouncy chair, and yeah, that was cute, but
yeah,
what I loved about the video was she wasn't even in it, but I could hear her laughing, and
nice.
just the joy she had in that little baby
Yeah.
boy was so beautiful, it brought tears to my eyes. So
Well, I
how
think that
do
outweighs. I wanna be clear, so I don't think any of these things are a problem. It's just
Yeah,
that's how pervasive it is, and all of that joy and all of that, surely that outweighs, any negative impact of these things because it's just filled with love, and it's part of our culture. So we just have
yeah.
to accept that we are always being compared, and the things that get rewarded aren't the things that are necessarily best for our emotional health. So that's part of the world we live in, and that's okay,
So,
that's where we are.
Michael, what can we do to protect ourselves about that once we realize that that is
Mhm.
true. Because I think a lot of times we don't even realize that that's happening because we've just been conditioned to believe this is how it is.
Yeah. I think, and this is probably, I don't know. I don't want to make a judgment about that. I was wondering if this is, more true for some populations than others, or people in certain professions more than others. So, in the world of acting, is it more common, more likely to be in the habit of comparing yourselves to others because you're constantly putting yourself out there for someone else to judge you and compare you to others to choose you over someone else or not. So, it might be a lot more present in your work life. But we all got that habit from an early age of comparing ourselves to others. And I think first having the awareness of when am I comparing myself? And usually, and I think social media has done a lot of damage in this area because kids can compare their worst moments to their friends' best, or even not friends, their rivals' best moments. So for
Yeah.
people who only put, my life looks very glamorous on Facebook, so I call it my glamorous life of fake book. So I put a beautiful picture of me doing beautiful things, and it's really fun, and I want to share. And then it came into my awareness a few years ago, in a conversation like this, about the comparing, that there are people really suffering who look at my beautiful Facebook picture of me doing something amazing and feel down about themselves because they're comparing their bad day to my best day.
Yeah.
And I don't want to share my negative things. I get up all pissed off and grumpy and whatever, and I don't want to share my really miserable day and I just feel depressed and I don't want to do anything and I'm not going to do anything and you can't make me. My day, I don't share that on Facebook and complain about the world. That doesn't help
Right.
anyone else, doesn't help me. Unless I only post these beautiful moments like I have this glamorous life and then others think that that's my real life and all I am, and they compare and feel bad about themselves because of that. That's not helpful. So I don't know the answer. I don't have a clue where to go with all that other than to try and be as authentic as possible. And when I share my 60 years of work on feeling enough, feeling good enough of my own story, I think that's more helpful than showing off whatever a beautiful thing I did recently. You know what I mean? Um, so I
I
think it's a way.
absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah. Also, I think we all, as adults, maybe kids don't know, but I think as adults, we know that most people are only sharing their best moments for the most part on social media. And that, yeah, it's interesting because the sharing of the process is good and it's useful, and some people do it. Like, I have done it, like, here's a self-tape, was an audition I did or whatever, so that's part of the process. But I think it just also goes to, you're not going to share your mostly, you're not gonna share your most down moments
No.
because they're private, for one, or at least that's how I feel, and but also 2, it's not a moment where you think, "Oh, I'm feeling like absolute shit. Let me grab my camera and film myself,"
Right. Right.
right? I
Of
mean,
course.
that's
Of course.
so yeah, I mean, but logically, I know that everybody has has light and dark in their life just like I do. But you're right, you said it earlier that actors are always comparing themselves because we are always being judged and we are the product. So to separate yourself, because especially in this day and age when nobody is trying to be a chameleon actor, at least you
Mhm.
shouldn't be, because what is selling these days is authenticity. So the more raw, the more your impulses are your impulses, all of that through the understanding of the character, obviously, but the more you are reacting truthfully as if you were that person, those are the words, right? Then you are bringing yourself to every role, every audition. And here's where it really hurts. It doesn't hurt when there are 1,000 people up for the role and you don't get it. It's like,
Mhm.
whatever. I just do that. And, you know, I don't even think about it. Like, there have been things that have come back to me months later. Sometimes I was like, what? I don't even remember auditioning for that. Um, the ones that hurt are the ones where you've had a callback, a second callback. Maybe you've had an in-person audition and it was down between you and maybe one or two other people. And then somebody else gets it because that feels so personal.
Mhm.
Is there anything that you can recommend around that, like
Yeah.
to protect yourself or
Mhm. A couple of thoughts. I scribbled down a quick word or two here while you were talking because it made me think about when you said we are the product.
yeah.
And in most cases, I would argue vehemently against that notion. And in this case, I understand because of your explanation of that being that authentic, being more authentic and really being in the character. And I get that. It's true, in my work as well, because I am the front line. It's like if somebody's working with me, they're working with me. If you're going to spend a week on a retreat with me, I'm so closely integrated to the product that it's very hard to see the separation.
Yeah.
And I know, so it still feels like I am the product. And I understand intellectually that I am not. It's like I am not my behaviors. So my presentation, my this conversation I am having with you right now, this is behavior we are executing. It is not us. We are separate from our behavior. Sometimes good people do bad things, or smart people do stupid things, or whatever.
For
That it's
sure.
the stupid thing I did, that I'm not stupid. And it's so important that we remember that. And so it's just so closely related in the type of work that we're talking about that it might be even harder to remember that I am not the product. My expression is the product. My artistic creation is the product. My work is the product. My acting is the product. I am not the product. If my acting is not good enough to make a living at this, does not mean I am not good enough as a human being. I am not the product.
Well, let can we go from an
Mhm.
assumption that the acting is good enough?
Yeah. And so,
'Cause
yeah,
I think that,
yeah,
yeah, I mean, my audience is kind of specifically trained actors who have been
yeah.
in the business for a while. I don't think that they're unsure about their talents for the
Yeah.
most part. Maybe some people are, but
Well, in
I
that
think for the
moment,
most part,
how do we
yeah,
feel in that moment where you didn't get the part and it feels personal? Apparently I wasn't good enough to get that part at this moment because I didn't, or I was, and something else happened that it was more personal because I know my acting is good enough, and it
right.
feels personal. How this is where it gets tricky, and this is where we
Yeah.
can make a real change. It's not what we don't know. It's what we don't have access to in how we feel, because what's directing our decisions and behaviors and beliefs is old stuck emotions. And the
Mm.
thinking part of our brain that knows better doesn't have access to those old stuck emotions, right? The thinking part of our brain does not have access to those old stuck emotions that are running the show. So all we can talk about it forever. It doesn't change the behavior other than
Yeah.
making a decision and then applying sheer willpower. And that isn't as effective as we'd like it to be. It would be a whole lot easier if we could change how we actually felt underneath, if we even had access to it or knew. And we do, and now we know how to access this. This is what you did in your session the other day. So that if there's the old stuck emotions bring up that feeling of being compared and humiliated as a child, then that if that stuck emotion is still there, then it's still running the show and sabotaging us and we don't even know it, or it can be.
Mm.
And
Mm.
so um, intellectually, we know as adults that, that we understand that we're comparing our worst day to someone else's best. And yet we still do it. Yes, we know it. And so can we bring more into our awareness in the moment that that's what I'm doing, so that we can notice how that feels when we are having our best day and we're not comparing ourselves to someone else's worst day. They're doing that to themselves when we're the
Sure.
one having the good day.
Yeah.
But it still
So,
happens. It's habituated.
yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. I think it becomes part of our belief
Yeah.
system, and we just assume that it's true
Yeah.
because we have so integrated it into our
That's right.
BS system, belief system, right? What I like
Yes.
to call it.
Yeah. I love that.
Um, One of the exercises that I lead new clients through, well, I actually don't lead them through it. I give them prompts, much like
Uh-huh.
you do, and then I ask them to go and write what has drawn them to being an actor and what has pulled them away from being an actor,
Mm.
so that we can get to the root of why they're not where they want to be. And it often comes down to a few things. One is not feeling enough. So, not trusting that the work that you put into it is going to bear the fruit. Another one is punishing yourself. That comes
Mm.
up a lot. So, people having done something in their lives that they feel has made them again not worthy, because it all boils down to that, right? It's the
Mhm.
not worthy. And the
Mhm.
limiting beliefs, whatever form they take, whether that's like, I'm going to punish myself, or I'm going to deny myself, or I'm not going to invest in myself or put the work in myself. But it always comes down to, for one reason or another, because I am not worthy.
Mhm. I agree with that.
And, obviously I'm not a therapist, I'm not a specialist. I ask people to write it and then tell their story, because what I find is often the writing of the story gets one part of it out, but the telling of the story gets to the emotion of it, especially when there's sort of that heightened thing of people watching you and listening to you.
Mhm.
And I never have anyone interrupt anyone during a story. So they just are, it's not there to be judged. It's not good or bad. It's not entertaining or not. What I what I ask participants to do when they're listening is to just try and notice patterns. If things have come up again and again for that person in some sort of a recognizable way. Excuse me, I have a frog in my throat. Or the times when you were like, ooh, that's interesting. I want to know more about that. Or, ooh, I think I see them now, right? I'm seeing you. Or, where you lean back and you're like, I'm not sure that that's authentic, or I'm not sure that that's really what it is.
Mhm.
And then lastly, we all give feedback based on what I just said. So, not judging it, but just kind of like our impressions. Maybe a word will pop out to someone, whatever it is. But then I ask them to go and sit with that and think about the beliefs that they have formed based on these actions that have led them to these actions. There's no right or wrong, there's no
Mhm.
grade on this. I would love to be able to do that. Maybe you can help me, I don't know, in a way that is even more insightful and helpful for my clients. Because they all, for the most, I've not had anyone say it wasn't cathartic in one form or
Right.
another. And yet I think it could be so much more.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. There's always more, right? I think no matter how proficient we get, you work with people who have a lot of experience, a lot of training, a lot of talent. And I work with people who are from a variety of different careers. I haven't worked with that many actors. I've worked with some coaches, supporting some coaches who work with singers or musicians more, some actors. And I've worked with several people, Olympic athletes, who were from a very young age taught that perfection is the only option,
Mm.
right? Imagine going through life being 60 years old and still believing that the Russians are eventually going to give you a 10. It's not going to happen.
Not in this day and
So,
age, it's not,
yeah,
no.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's this idea that anything, second place is not an option.
Mhm.
Not getting it absolutely perfect, and there is an assessment of what perfection is in that world, right? It's either perfect or it's not. It's not subject to artistic interpretation, in very small areas. So this level of what, no matter how good we get, we never feel we're enough. And
Mm.
then you have your career all nailed, and then feeling no matter how much I do for my kids, I'm never enough. No matter how much I do for my parents, I'm never enough. No matter how much I do for my spouse
Mm.
or the school or the church or my boss or whatever, I'm never enough. And something is always something missing. And so what we find most of the time, or people achieve a level of success and they start feeling like they don't deserve it. Like to your point of I've done
Mm.
something, no, I don't deserve this much success. People in my family don't achieve this, or I've outperformed my parents, I've outperformed my mother. That's not okay. And those are often, almost always in my experience, those are unconscious beliefs that we don't even know we have.
That's what, yes, exactly.
Yeah. So when you're doing your writing exercise, which is gorgeous, by the way, and I'm picturing this, a group of your people sitting in a circle sharing their story, and that's so valuable, and it's coming from the thinking part of the brain.
Mm.
So what I,
Well, this is why I feel like it's important to tell it as well, because that
yeah,
connects it to the emotion. But yes, they're
yeah,
still reading something they
mhm,
wrote. You're
yeah.
absolutely
And
right. Yeah.
so how I would want to play with that with you now, I think we need an actors retreat for a weekend of playing together.
That'd be fun.
So, and maybe it's modifying and playing some of your skills, some of your tools with some of my tools, or blending
Mm.
them. I love hosting circle and passing the talking piece, or as my one of my circle partners calls it, the listening piece, because it gives us the gift of listening.
Mm.
And as you've noticed, I'm a talker. So when someone else is holding the talking piece, it's like I love that I get to sit and listen. And talking is off limits for me because I don't have it, right? It's such a great gift.
Right.
So when we, in those circles where I would do a bit of a group rim experience to dip people more into their bodies, to invite in more of like well, we've compared it, and the current research supports this and has shown what's happening in the brain during a RIM session is we're actually creating psychedelic-like effects in the brain without any drugs. And you
Oh,
can do
wow.
this. You
Okay.
just do this. What I did with you the other day.
Yeah.
It's just a place where spontaneous imagination brings something in. It's not you're thinking something up. That's not what imagination is. Imagination is this third party, we'll call it, that shows up. And people say, well, I don't know where this is coming from, but I just had this idea. The ideas that pop in that don't make any sense or that
Mhm.
surprise you, that you can't take credit for inventing, that just come in. We call that spontaneous imagination. And people of different faiths and beliefs will call it a lot of different things. We'll just call it spontaneous imagination. That is different than thinking. And when you combine that in a certain way with deepened body awareness, because the nervous system is in the body, not the thinking part of the brain. And so when we really get into the body and combine it with the use of spontaneous imagination, we can leverage those two in combination, that new things will come up so that we can have the old stuck emotions, whatever they are. So first of all, they rise to the surface, and then we can allow them to pass through and no longer be running the show in our
Mhm.
unconscious. So we want to get those out of the way. So I would say the solution is to do several sessions with the intention of clearing out what you don't know you need to clear out.
Mm.
Right? All those
Do
bold,
several RIM sessions.
yeah, just to clear out the things, to go clearing out whatever shows up. And sometimes people have, well, yeah, but I know this horrible thing happened, so I definitely want to clean up anything around that. That's a good intention too. And I'm never surprised when something completely seemingly unrelated shows up. That, the humiliation at the chalkboard when you were in the third grade, or whatever it is, those things show up all the time, and that's great. Or
Mhm.
the unexpressed grief when a grandparent died when we were little. Families try to
Yeah.
protect us from the sadness and the grief, and so children don't get invited to funerals. They don't get in. They're told, "Oh, honey, don't feel sad, don't cry," and so we're carrying around this unexpressed grief for decades. So those things show up all the time, and it's easy
Mm.
to allow them to move through them when we know how, and we're not being told how to feel, or that we should have let that go, or whatever. So get it
Right.
out of the way. Yeah.
Yeah.
And now, so in your work, so I just want to touch on this before I forget again. When you said that, it's like, it's so important. What gets hired now is when you're really authentic, when you are being like that
Yes.
raw, real part of yourself in the
Yeah.
context of a character. I think it's the same with advertising, marketing, public social media marketing, and all of that. That what gets attention is real. You have to be really authentic. Nobody
Yeah.
wants perfect and polished and all of. They don't want to
Right.
look like a newscaster reading the script.
Yeah.
And I love that. And if we're being that real, how do we dip into those deep emotions that help us be a better presenter? You're better on stage, or you're better in front of the camera, or whatever. And yet we don't want that to be triggered. We want to have access to the emotions without going into our own trauma or someone else's. If we're taking on the feeling, that it can really be, especially empathic people, really can take on the pain of others. And I
Which
think it's very
most
easy.
actors are.
And so how do you get the compassion there and then dip into the feeling without taking on the pain and re-experiencing it every time? I can't imagine for an actor, because I know the science. There was some research after the marathon bombing, the Boston Marathon bombing years ago.
Mhm. Mhm.
The research showed that people watching it on TV, because we were kind of glued to our television sets for a couple of days, or a lot of people were. And when you watch these things on TV, that it can cause the same traumatic responses in our body as if we were there.
Yeah.
And so, and now dipping, really feeling it, it's like, oh, your nervous system doesn't know you're an actor. Your nervous system is experiencing this. So, how do we best clean out our own actual stuck emotions and trauma work, so that we can really have a clear separation of what's me and what's not me, what's my work.
Can I just mention something that popped into my head right now? So, because you mentioned our nervous system and our mind doesn't understand why our body is feeling this way.
Hmm.
And I don't know why this just popped into my head, but maybe it might be useful. I don't know. But when I had a call back for a really big audition in person, which is not normal. Normally it's a bunch of self tapes, going back and forth. But I had been, flown up to Berlin and had a call back there. And of course I really wanted this part. And I'm sitting in my car outside of the studio, and I'm saying to myself, I'm not nervous, I'm excited. So, because it's the same physiological thing, right? My stomach
Hmm.
had butterflies, I was sweating, I was, my throat was constricted, all of that stuff, right? And I just kept trying to tell myself, I'm not nervous, I'm excited. I'm not nervous, I'm excited. This is going to be fun. This is going to be fun. I'm not nervous, I'm excited. And it's a safe place, like a workshop is a
Yeah,
safe place. So, and I'm going to be as free as I am in a workshop.
that's right.
It helped. It was good. Maybe I need more practice with that. But it definitely did help. I think it would not have helped me to say, I'm so nervous, I'm so nervous, I'm so
No.
nervous, right? Even just saying that now, I can feel my stomach jump, right? I can literally feel it happen. So, is there anything around tricking ourselves like that?
Yeah. So, like you said, just saying it now, it stirred up your stomach.
Yeah.
And one of a couple of tricks on that, I would say to focus on only on the positive affirmations. So, just say, I'm excited. Forget about the what I'm not. The unconscious doesn't hear the negative words. So when you're saying, I'm not nervous, your nervous system is hearing, I'm nervous, I'm nervous, I'm nervous.
Right. Yeah.
So
Methinks thou
don't say
doth
what I'm not.
confess to me. Yeah.
That's not helpful. Don't affirm the negative. So now how can I say that in a positive way? So that's all I want to say about that. Now just say what is it you do want to feel, and that I'm safe. This is fun. This is what I came here for. This is why I'm here. I love this work. I'm happy. I'm having fun. I'm going to have fun. This is a safe place to be me and and to be myself. And I love myself and they love me. And this is why I'm here. And I'm safe. I'm here to have fun. I'm just going to go play. And I'm excited, right? To all of those positive affirmations. And when we say, I am not nervous, I'm not scared, I'm not the just it's as if those words, I'm not, the not word is filtered out. It doesn't get heard.
Mm. So, is there anything we can do around that when you're feeling jealousy? Why did she
Mhm.
get that role and I
Yeah.
didn't get it, or something
Like
like
say,
that?
I well, what would be the opposite of that isn't that I'm not jealous. That's still in a comparison mode.
Right.
I would just say, I'm happy for her.
Yeah. What I try and say is, easier said than done
Yeah,
sometimes is,
I know. I get it.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm just gonna be
Yeah,
real here.
good for
Yeah.
her. Yeah, I want that
She
for me. It's okay to want that for me,
Yes.
right?
And what I love is, right, we are human beings, we are complex by nature,
Mhm.
and we are allowed to hold two opposing,
Yeah,
conflicting
yeah,
emotions.
yeah. Now
So I can feel jealousy and I can be grateful because her getting that role is showing me that someone like me could also get that role.
that's right. That's right. And here's a thing on jealousy. There's the flip side that one of the things we use at the RIM Institute a lot around jealousy is to ask, what is it when we're feeling jealous? What is it that that person has that I want? And am I willing to take action to get it?
Love that because it is so true. It's often not that role. And I know, like, when I have a role or, have just come off of a job I'm super excited about, whatever, or I'm looking forward to one,
Hmm.
and someone else gets a role that I think I would have been good for, it's like, oh, good. Now we're in this together kind of a thing. We're
Hmm.
coming up together. It's when you don't have it, it's when you're in that place of
Yeah.
lack.
So, what is it that that person has that I want? And am I willing to do something to get it? Or what is it about that person that I want? What do they have that I want that I'm haven't been willing to pay the price to get? Sometimes we haven't been paying the price.
I
And then
think
we
that that
realize
is
that we don't really
so
want it
true.
that bad, right? Which would be okay to discover, oh, I could have that. I'm not willing to do it. No, I'd rather not have it than do that. And now it's okay.
And well, it's interesting because I think often many actors, don't know what they need to do that is above and beyond.
Well, that
Because
begs a great question then, right? What
it
do
is a great
can I
that's why
do?
I'm in business as a
Yeah, that's
coach,
right. What don't I
Yeah.
know? What can I do to get there? That's a better, healthier response to the jealousy is what do they have that I want? And what can I do to get there? I'll
Yeah.
ask Ann. You know?
Love it. Soundbite. Yeah.
And I will go inside and find out to deepen our self awareness. So, what can I do? How might I unearth what I don't know about myself that's getting in the way? Do I have some part of me that is trying to keep me safe, that's sabotaging my every move? What's in my way? Is it my mother's voice? Is it my grandmother's voice? I had someone the other day did a intergenerational, and I think generational trauma is a thing. It's now
Mhm.
become something mainstream that people talk about. And this is something that RIM has been working with for over 20 years now, that we can actually go into the generational trauma and do, because it's all virtual anyway, it's like we're not literally time traveling to your childhood and redoing it. Your nervous system thinks we are, so we are.
Right.
And so, like, you can get yourself worked up to feel nervous, which is great if you're needing to act nervous. Not so great if you're going in for an interview for an audition. And so, when you go into the memory, and it's imagined, and in the new experience, you have safety and agency and voice, which you didn't have before. So the
Mm.
nervous system can regenerate the old images in memory to go into the point of trauma, which is just a stuck emotion. It's not the event, it's the emotion. So whether it's what people think of as a large, traumatic, horrific event, or the humiliation of the chalkboard in the third grade, whatever it is, it's a stuck emotion. When those memories pop up, the science has proven over and over again that you need to be in the memory, not talking about it. If you want to
Ah,
actually heal it,
okay.
heal it in the
Interesting.
nervous system, you have to be in it,
Yeah.
and you can change the emotional memory. Factual memory remains intact. No stories. Not that our factual memory is accurate or anything. It isn't, but it remains intact as best we know. But you can change how our nervous system feels safe now, and is no longer protecting us when we go in for an audition.
Yes. I love that. And I wonder if also, I mean, we use a lot of that as an acting tool, right?
Hmm.
Going back into a memory, and it's sense memory. Sense memory is what it's called, actually. And you go into, and you're not ever saying what I think I was feeling. You're saying, what am I smelling?
That's
Who's
right.
around
Present
me?
time.
What am I
Yeah.
wearing? Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm
Exactly.
curious though, and I haven't thought about this, but I mean, it seems like something like using sense memory when you to look for a moment of strength, to look for a moment of winning, to look for a moment of feeling enough,
Yeah.
and to tap into that before you go into an audition for an actor or
Absolutely.
whatever, whatever is a
Absolutely.
nerve-wracking kind of a situation.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Call forth a peak moment, a peak performance moment, or a past success. Those sorts of things. Some people use visualization. Um, I've done this with
Also good.
unemployed people working. Trying to with the state has had me come in and do workshops for people on unemployment, helping them get off unemployment. And when you're looking for a good job and you're really nervous, it's the same thing. You're auditioning for a part at this company. Um, that one visualization that I used to teach was the rolling the big white ball. They first of all making your own energy get bigger and bigger and bigger until it's the size of the room or however big you decide it is. And now we have that big ball of energy, and then roll it in front of you. Visualize rolling it in front of you into the interview. It's a technique I've had people come back and say, "Oh my God, I did that!" And it's like it was they felt so much more confident in the interview, and it gets them the job.
So
Um,
interesting.
yeah, power poses are that work this way, right? Have you heard of Amy? Not Katie Cuddy. She did a big TED
No,
talk on it, Harvard researcher. But by just acting as if, so if you hold your arms up in a victory position for 2 minutes,
maybe
it
I have seen that.
changes,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, or Wonder Woman pose, Superman pose, whatever.
Yes.
That a
Yeah.
couple of minutes of that changes the chemical makeup in your brain, and or at
Yeah.
least in your bloodstream. Nobody's cut open your brain to measure that, but it really changes how you show up in the interviews.
So
So yeah.
interesting. So there's another exercise, pulling from all sorts of different methods here,
Mhm.
but this kind of what you just said reminds me of that, and maybe might be helpful. So, for instance, when you're going into a scene, you sometimes want to think of an object or in terms of an action that you're doing. So I love that you had them create this object and then roll it in front of them
Mhm.
visually. That was a powerful thing for them. There are like one of my go-tos is when I'm feeling very fragile, or I need to have a fragility in my
Mhm.
scene because I often am coming from a place of strength. So finding the fragility is sometimes harder for me. Is one of my visualizations is that I have a core of a vase of the thinnest porcelain,
Mhm.
and it's just ready to crack. And I'm trying to not crack that vase.
Mhm.
So I'm trying to keep it safe and Ooh, I can even feel it, like, working now,
Yeah,
just that
I was just yeah,
visualization.
I
Yeah,
just closed my eyes as you were
yeah,
talking about it a little bit. It's like, and then I wanted to say, okay, so just be the vase.
yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, and
and
there's a
and, there are the so I think I love this idea of creating an energy ball or maybe even like a core of rubber, that's strong and feels good
yeah,
and keeps me flexible and loose, but is keeping me strong or
yeah.
something like that, I don't know.
So, you know what would be the best visual for this? Is the one that the client's own psyche invents for them, then they don't know where the idea came from. 'Cause
Yes.
it'll be unique for everyone, and so this is where when we do group RIM experiences, people feel like it sounds like we're doing guided imagery, and it isn't because we have you invent the thing.
Yeah,
So if we say, maybe if we bring in a virtual resource and now you have an imagined resource, maybe it's an angel, maybe it's, even that's spontaneous. So maybe it's the dog you had when you were a kid pops in. So you have this other resource helping distancing your thinking mind from the creativity part. And
yeah.
the spontaneously what shows up is the perfect thing to represent your fragility, that as it, you also sense the safety that's still with you, that's ultimately protecting you, so that you're always working with a net, and yet you can still be the fragile vase or the fragile flower, the whatever comes up for you. And so whatever is needed, the psyche knows what it's doing. So when we get away, the further away from the thinking mind and allowing spontaneous imagination to bring in whatever they need for strength or fragility or safety, that they can do that. And that won't create something that's going to trigger their own trauma. They're not going to re-traumatize themselves by dipping into the emotion too deeply, that's too close to some of their own history, right? So
Mm,
if you have a trauma history, and everybody does. It just whether it's, how big the somewhere on that continuum, that
sure.
what are we willing to dip into, and what gets too close, and what is fine and it's worth it to get the gig, um, and but then we have to medicate afterward to recover from it, and we don't
Mm,
want that. So
no.
how close can we get to the fire without getting burned? And so how do we create the safety so that we're safe walking through the fire? And so
Mm.
it's to allow their psyche to create that bubble for them, not us, because we don't know what's perfect for them.
So, Michael, do you have a question that someone can ask themselves around creating those images for themselves?
So yeah, I would say I feel like for me, I would not, I would, so if I ask myself a question, I'm back to thinking too hard. It's like, maybe if I squint harder, something better will come. Yeah.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
I wonder if maybe just calling in, to call in my own resources, to tap into my own infinite connection to love and inner resourcing. So I have access to that. Um, Maybe it's a recalled feeling. So for depending on belief systems, so I'm going to say, so, well, you need to ask Jesus to be with you. Well, if you're not a Christian, that's not going to work for you.
Right.
So what do you want to call in? That we are all, so for the atheist, remembering that you are vibrating energy connected to all that is, and you can't be separate from it. I mean, we all get back to non-duality and oneness. No matter what we call that, we are all
Right.
connected to that. And so for me,
Can
it's some combination of that. But what can you call in for your own resources to recall your own natural, to call on the intelligence of life to be with you, or to bring forth an image that allow me to do that?
For me, when we did the RIM session, what was very helpful was I loved how you said describe the feeling,
Hmm.
and then does it have a color? Does it have a
Hmm.
shape? Um, and that for me turned into the lilac,
Yeah.
which was this purple color that turned into the lilacs.
Hmm.
And, in thinking about it after the RIM session, I realized that I think, and I never even knew it before, that lilacs were a symbol of my innocence, my freedom, because I used to pluck them and suck the honeycomb or whatever you call it out of them, the nectar. And it was just a time when I was free and wasn't thinking about what people think about me or anything. And I don't know if that's too much of a prompt to ask someone
Hmm.
to come up with a because I get what you're saying, but it's so kind of abstract and
Yeah.
intellectual on in the on
Yeah.
in hand. And I just would love to give someone a tool to say, for whatever you need, is there a place they could start with?
So that we want to really get away from the question so that they don't have to come up with it. So the line, I think what I said to you is, so right now your imagination is going to bring forth a virtual resource who wants to be with you.
Okay.
Someone or
Yes.
something strong, powerful, loving, supportive, and just like that. And you said it was I think at first it was purple energy or violet or purple energy. It started up with
Mm,
that. And sometimes that's enough. People will start with that. It's like purple comes up so often as like a spiritual presence, as a color
really
that
interesting.
I just
Yeah.
go, oh, this is the capital color, capital P purple. They're talking about the equivalent of saying God is here with me, and just shows up
Mm,
as purple energy. It's quite common for a lot of people. Um, so whatever shows up is perfect. And sometimes it's a color, sometimes it's a knowing, sometimes it's a shawl, sometimes it's whatever the image is. But to rather than have them come up with something, just to invite in or to allow or to just let your imagination bring forth whatever
yeah.
it is, so something like that. And in the so Dr. Deb Sandella, the creator of RIM, has a book called Goodbye, Hurt, and Pain. And
Mm,
in it, it teaches simple steps. It tells some example stories, but it gives simple steps that people can do for themselves. And then there's one whole session they can lead themselves through. Now, it's not being facilitated, so it doesn't go as deep as it does with a facilitator. And it's definitely not something you would use on someone else, because it doesn't teach how to set up safety for all of that to be guiding
yeah.
someone. So,
Yeah.
but for self work, it's brilliant at this. And I invite clients once, when they've done a few sessions with me, I say, well, a lot of this you can do yourself anytime. Like, because you now
Mm,
know how, when I ask, well, where is that emotion in your body? Well, what's its size, shape, color, form, temperatures, or movement, not whatever. And when you find that in your body and it becomes tangible, your thinking brain can now handle the spinning purple vortex or the red fuzzy ball. Your thinking
mm,
brain doesn't know what to do with an intangible emotion. So you're having to
mm,
figure that out. And you're never going to figure that out with the thinking brain. So it is a feeling. So why not give it, when you give it a tangible form, your thinking brain can come along as a partner. So I would say that's the simplest, easiest thing is, so feeling the fear now. Maybe you're sitting in the parking lot feeling nervous. Where's the nervous in your body? Oh, it's right here in my stomach and it's spinning. Oh, well, which way is it spinning? Well, which, just study it. What's the
yeah.
color? Oh, it's like, ugh. Yeah. So just, and if you just be in it and allow it, it tends to dissipate. The negative things dissipate when we allow them, and the positive ones expand when we allow them. And so if you just
Interesting.
notice it, it's like, okay, so here you are. Okay. And just allow the scary feeling to be there. And
Hmm.
then it's like, oh, well, of course you're here. You're trying to keep me safe. That's what fear is. It's like the
Yeah.
smoke detector in your house. In my house, it's never been a real fire, knock on wood. And it usually means that dinner is ready or something. It's never a fire. And yet we
Right.
still, but we keep the
Yeah.
thing. It's
Yeah.
it's an alarm. And so we
Yeah.
have this fear alarm telling us that there's something to be afraid of, to avoid, or to prepare for. That's all it is. It's like, oh, thank you, fear, for showing up. Thank you
Mm,
for wanting
mm,
to keep me safe. I got this. I'm excited about this. And you can go on to your affirmations. So welcoming the negative feelings. So those positive affirmations are great. And first, I would welcome the negative feeling, welcome the fear, welcome the scary, and thank it. Notice that's what it says. That's all. And look around and say, I'm here now. I'm safe. I'm not, nobody's beating me up. Nobody's I'm right here. Feel the steering wheel. This is safe. And now I'm going to go in and I'm excited about this, because it's
yeah.
just your nervous system is not in reality here. And so to
Yeah.
check in with reality, but to welcome the fear, it's there to serve you, and
Yeah.
we should be thankful for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just want to kind of like give you the steps back to make sure that I've understood them. So when we're having a negative feeling, we should just first of all acknowledge it, take it for what it is. It's just your subconscious trying to keep you safe. Then we should just ask ourselves neutral questions about it, like,
Yeah.
where am I feeling this? What does it have a shape? Does it have a color? Is it still? Is it moving? Which direction? Like, just to continue to ask ourselves
Yeah.
about it,
Make
see
it
if
tangible.
it's changing, and then and then what should we do?
Well, I don't think we have to do anything with it. Just what if we just allowed it? A lot of times we could ask what it wants to share with us, or we can thank it. Like it's fear and it's your old friend and she's just always showing up saying, hey, come on in, put your feet up, take a load off. I've been expecting
Right.
you. You coming with me,
Aunt
or you gonna
Tilly's
wait in the
here
car?
again. Right.
Yeah, maybe you want
Yeah,
to ask her to wait in the car. I'll be back in an hour. You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
yeah.
Great. Well,
Make the
Michael,
noise.
this has been so great. I think we're just a little bit over an hour, but that's okay. Where can people get a hold of you if they would like to get a hold of you?
So, I would say, if you want to see the TED Talk on enoughness, you could go to enoughnessguy.com. And it starts right
Okay,
there with the TED Talk. And there's and you can download a free book on it's our 5 steps to starter kit to enoughness, on the path to enoughness 5 step starter kit.
love
So
it.
you can get that. And if you do that, yeah, the trick is that you'll give me your email, and then we'll be in touch. Now, I don't do a ton of that. I hate getting emails. I sign up for something I'm kind of interested in, and then they badger me
Yeah,
to death. I'm not a
yes,
badgerer. I'm always getting beat up for that from the marketing gurus. No, you have to
yeah.
do all this email. I'm not, but that's one way of connecting, to stay in touch with us. And
Michael Klein,
yeah,
this has been such a pleasure. I really enjoyed having you on Act Bold. And now, before I let you go, I always ask every guest this question, and I don't let them prepare for it. So tell Aunt Tilly to go to the corner. What has been one time in your life when you acted boldly and something wonderful has come from it?
oh gosh, that happens all the time. That's how I live. What would be
Great.
just yeah, just recently, this year, this was my year. Last year at this time, my birthday was in February, and last year at the end in December, November, December timeframe, I decided to say yes to a lot more in the next year for
Mm,
my 60th year. And so, 3 goals I set that I just had always wanted to say yes to was to do a TED Talk, to hike across Costa Rica, and to learn a foreign language. And I've done all 3 of those, and all 3 of them just blossomed right in front of me. Be only after I said yes, though. We have to act bold first, say yes, and then the how shows up at every
absolutely.
step of it. Yeah,
I love that. Michael, let us know in the comments, people, viewers, whatever, listeners, however you may be consuming Act Bold at this time, but let us know what really jumped out for you. And, if you would like to call or get in touch with Michael, then you know where to find him, the enoughnessguy.com. Until
awesome.
next time, you stay your bold and beautiful self. Bye bye.